Point is that irrespective of political parties, the point is there are serious questions on the probe that have been raised. And let me bring in PK Jain, who's a former IPS officer. Mr. Jain, I want you to come in on this because whatever the court has observed on part of the prosecution, it does not make the prosecutors look very good because they are talking about how witnesses, who are part of the entire proceedings, they were not made to participate in an identification parade and they were not even called to testify. Some of the eyewitnesses in this matter. They're also saying that, several lapses such as the statements are identical. Now, how can that be the case? Because the court has taken the allegation of torture within custody very seriously. PK Jain.
Madhav, good evening. Thank you so much for having me here. Let me, make a few statements. Mumbai Police, this is not the only case which has been investigated by Mumbai Police. There are n number of cases which have been investigated and have resulted into conviction. This particular case also resulted into conviction at the trial stage. A trial court goes into much more details than the high courts ever go into. Now, the trial court, after a long gap of 9 or 10 years, they pronounced a certain 12 persons guilty as charged. And punishment were pronounced on them from death to life sentence. Now, the case came in the High Court for appeal, and there the entire judgment has been overturned, and now everybody has been acquitted. I'm shocked. In fact, it's a matter of concern for all of us that at the trial stage, if somebody has been found guilty, there has to have some evidence on record to prove them so. And incidentally, the death sentence is given only in the rarest of rare cases. So that means there was enough evidence. Now, whatever the High Court has stated, that judgment has to be gone into in detail, and the government will have to go in appeal to the Supreme Court for overturning this particular judgment. At the same time, as Mr. Gawande has very rightly mentioned, this issue should not be politicized as to who was the government which was the government in charge. Whichever government is in charge, I can dare say, and I can vouch for it, that the police officers who are looking into and carrying on investigation and are being supervised absolutely professionally, especially in cases like this, where hundreds of lives have been lost and hundreds of lives have been injured.
Well, Mr. Jain, I will only say that, for a country where 189 people have died, we are not even able to secure a conviction. That speaks volumes of the complete collapse and failure of our lawyers, our legal system, our criminal system, the police. Everyone should be hanging their heads in shame that this is how we treat terrorists in this country. We are not even able to secure convictions, and it doesn't matter whether it's a policeman who didn't do the job right, whether it's the courts, whoever it may be. We are not getting into that. What kind of a nation is this where we have no justice, where 189 people die? And I want to bring in Advocate Rizwan Siddiquee in this. No, Rizwan Siddiquee, end of the day, it does not matter.
You said that certain witnesses who were not brought into the TIP. Now, let me tell you, there are hundreds of witnesses in such cases. The police and the prosecution does not put everybody in the court. There are a sample of witnesses who are put up in the court and who can explain the entire happenings and whatever has transpired very clearly in the court, which was done.
No, but this is for the court to look into, or the prosecutors to convince the court, sir. And it is not that only one lapse has been pointed out. There are multiple lapses which the court is speaking of. I am not sitting in judgment of whether the court has done its job right or wrong, or whether the prosecutors have done their job rightly or wrongly. At the moment, the court has raised questions of the prosecution. The larger issue is, what about those families who've lost their loved ones and near and dear ones? Advocate Rizwan Siddiquee, many are going to question what kind of justice system do we have? Because this appears to be a complete mockery. After 189 people die, we cannot find out who is responsible. We cannot convict anyone. What's going on?
See, if you look at the entire case, I mean, the way I look at it as an officer of the court, as an advocate, if you look at the number of advocates who are representing the state in this particular matter and the number of cases which were clubbed together in appeal, and when the High Court looked into everything meaning the entire trial which was carried out by the trial court, and dug into the details of the entire matter, and the prosecution then failed to bring about the case the way it's supposed to be brought out. Therefore, the High Court overturned the order of the trial court. If you look at a 650-page judgment, the judgment has been indexed and has been dug into detail. Every detail has been given into the judgment. Unfortunately, it was a 650-page judgment. I could not read through the whole thing. just took a glance at the judgment, and the judgment quite correctly reveals that the prosecution has failed at multiple stages. And I can understand, the emotions of the people. I can understand everything. But unfortunately, the courts have to deliver justice through a justice delivery system, that is through evidences. And if the evidences were not brought out the way they were supposed to be brought out by the prosecution, then it is a complete failure on the part of the prosecution. It is a complete failure on the part of the state. It is a complete failure on the part of the state to appoint the correct lawyers who could not bring out the case properly and correctly the way the division bench wanted it to be. The High Court, it's a division bench which passed the order. So if you look at the case, if you look at the way the case has been looked into by the judges were not with a biased mind. They were not looking at politics here. They were not looking at political parties. They were looking at the evidences which were supposed to be brought in correctly by the advocates. And the advocates were appointed by the state. Now, the advocates could have been brought in as a special public prosecutor. I do not understand why we had so many advocates from the state and none of them could convince the High Court that the prosecution had a good case for conviction, so that the conviction order should not have been overturned. But if you look at the lacunas, and if you look at the loopholes, and if you look at the way the entire judgment is tearing into the trial court, the trial which was conducted by the trial court, it clearly shows that there was not enough evidence and even in any event, if you look at the criminal justice system in India and even otherwise, it is the accused who's always at a very pedestal. So understanding.
No, but there are